10x is actually a mindset.
Where did all of this start? I mean, how long has this journey been?
If you feel that your life resembles a circus, are you surrounding yourself with clowns? Grant would always say this, right? If people don't know you, they can't flow you. अगर हिंदी में बात करें तो जो दिखता है वो बिकता है. The more desperate you get, the worse the result.
People are scared when it comes to sales. I mean, honestly, that's the biggest thing that I have when it comes to sales.
Yeah. In sales, you're not limited by how much money you can make. Right? It's truly limitless. You're only limited by your imagination.
How you took sales initially when you started up, and now how is it for you?
Once you actually get into entrepreneurship or even working, you'll have all the aspects of objection handling, rejection, negotiation.
I feel like at every stage, even when you are getting yourself a job or something, you're selling.
The start of any speaking gig is not the trainer, it's the audience. Treat everyone how they want to be treated.
What kind of soft skills would you suggest to people with sales?
So one of the biggest skills that you require in sales is obviously, perseverance and, persistence and follow-up.
One book that is still with you. I would like to hand over the stage to Gaurav Bhagat sir with us first of all. And, I'll initially start with your journey.
Sure.
But with your journey, I would really like to know what is this 10x thing, because I see that on your blazer as well. I want to know how all of this started, and when we say you are the only person licensed in India to do all of that, so, how all of this came into picture.
Of course, first of all, thank you for having me on the show, and Charu, it's a pleasure to be here, and been following your journey over the last few months, and it's great what you're doing, for your audience of startups, young entrepreneurs, perhaps aspiring professionals and more. So good stuff, and happy to be here today. So the entire 10x piece, and I think it's very interesting. A lot of times, when we come in and we start having conversations with people, they think 10x means, that our sales are going to 10x or our lives will 10x and all of that. And I always tell people, and this is perhaps maybe even your viewers and listeners could do this as well. If you're driving, don't do this, but you could do this right now. So what I would tell you to is close your eyes. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and close my eyes as well. So with your eyes closed, I want you to think about that one thing that you really want in your life. Okay, that one thing that you really want. It could be that home, that car, that bank balance. So think about that one thing. Okay, your eyes are closed and you're thinking about that one thing that you want, in your life. Quiet for just a couple of seconds.
Yeah.
Now think about all the action. Okay, think about all the activity. Think about all the things that you will have to do. Your eyes are still closed to get that one thing. So how many meetings, how many podcasts, how much you'll have to achieve at work and all of that. So think about all those actions and activities that you'll have to do to achieve that one thing. Okay, again, I'm quiet for a couple of seconds. Just think about that as well. So your eyes are closed and you're thinking about all the action, all the activity that'll take for you to achieve that one thing, right? I just want you to think about that for a couple of seconds. And with that said, I want you now, go ahead and open your eyes. And my question to you is, okay, to achieve that one thing, all the steps and all the action that you thought it would take, did that seem like a lot? Yes or no?
It did.
Yeah. So what the 10x rule states is that whatever you thought you would need to do to achieve that one thing, in reality, you'll have to take 10 times the amount of consistent, massive action to actually go ahead and achieve that. So if you thought that to get from point A to point B, or that thing that you wanted to get to, you think it'll take these many meetings or these many calls or this much action or these many podcasts, in reality, it'll take you 10 times the amount of what you thought to actually get you there. So 10x is actually a mindset, right? And when someone puts on this spin, or when someone comes through some of our programs and we talk about the 10x think, and Grant Cardone talks about this all the time, it's actually a switch that's flipping in the mind. And whatever you do, it has to be done with the 10x mindset. And what is very important is that it has to be massive, so it has to be big, but it also has to be consistent. Right? The mistake that people make is that they come out like a MS Dhoni and they try and hit chokkas and chakkas in the last ball of the over, or the last over of the match. You have to do it with consistency. It has to be something that you put in that effort and that action every day, and that's how you go out and achieve 10x results. So that's really what the 10x think is. But unfortunately, what's happening in India, everyone says, "Arey 10x matlab dhanda 10 guna ho jayega, or our sales will go up 10x, or our income will go up 10x." Yes, all of those things are going to happen, but you need to put in, the action and the activity as well.
Yeah, I mean, the mindset shift that comes that, 10x the amount of work is to be done to get something of that sort is
Right.
really needed, when you start to put in that.
Right.
And where did all of this start? I mean, how long has this journey been?
So interestingly, so I also run, a gifting company, and
Alright.
Consortium is a company that I started, when I was still in college. So now we're talking about 25 years ago. In 2017, I actually read the 10x rule, and I get in touch with Grant Cardone's team, and it's a Saturday. I'm heading back, from office, and I get a call back from Grant Cardone's, team member, a guy called Mike Bonnet, and him and I got chatting, and that's how we signed up, Grant Cardone to train our organization, which is the gifting company. And what happened is that was the July of 17. By December of 17, we'd actually doubled our sales, and we had a pretty, healthy, number prior to that. But even to go ahead and double from there was great. In 2018, I actually meet Grant Cardone for the first time. It's at a conference in Vegas. If I was to go back 2 weeks prior, I had attended a Tony Robbins event in Singapore. So Tony Robbins had come to Asia for the first time in, I don't know, like 15 years. And he always talks about limiting beliefs.
Yeah.
And, my thought was, okay, what really was my limiting belief? And one thing led to another. And I met Grant Cardone, and, he's like, I'm looking to license my content, because Grant at the time, I think, was 58 or 59. And he says, I don't know how many years I have left in me. I've created some great content. I have some, great things that I've done. And I'd like that to live on beyond me. So he thought about licensing. I was looking for, the next big thing, and it was a good connect. And there hasn't been any looking back since.
Yeah, and the magic just happened, right?
100%.
All right.
Yeah.
So, I want you to help us out with the initial things. I mean, you talked about limiting beliefs, right? Everybody, I believe, right now who is starting is dealing with some sort of limiting beliefs.
Sure.
So, how do you start with that? I mean, how does that thing happen in, you know?
So I think if we take a look at, where are people's limiting beliefs actually coming from? So, one could be obviously one's, upbringing, the commentary that they've had, at home, maybe obviously it's initially going to come from parents. It could also come from friends.
Yeah.
Today, obviously, social media is, a big influencer for people. So, there are a lot of inputs that, come in from there as well. And I always believe, and I tell this to people, if you feel that your, life resembles a circus, are you surrounding yourself with clowns? Right.
Yeah.
So what's your inner circle looking like? Who is, your time being spent with, where your inputs really coming from? And I think that's a very important aspect. And a lot of limiting beliefs for people are coming from their immediate environment. People talk a lot about motivation. And, I tell people, I say some people are naturally motivated.
Yeah.
It comes from within. Some people are motivated by, reward or punishment. Agar acha karenge, to, we'll get a promotion, we'll get more money. Agar acha nahi karenge, we might lose our job, or, we might run out of money. And of course, the third is, like I said, your environment. So these things play an important role. And I think limiting beliefs also come, from there. Fortunately, I came from a family where, we were always told the sky's the limit. If, I said, I want to go ahead and try this, they'll be like, go ahead and do this. You mentioned, at the age of 6, most parents would, tell their kids, study and, focus on your studies and all of that. I was 16 years old. I just switched schools, and I'd come, from Sanaa, which is near Kasoli, down to DPS Mathura Road. And it was a time when I also made the first pack of WWF trump cards. Maybe something before your time, but some of your older listeners might actually know about that. And I remember I used to take not books in my school bag, but trump cards. And I used to be selling them in school.
Okay.
And obviously, the teacher found out, the principal found out, and they called my parents, both my father and my mother. And they said, "Ye school mein dhanda karne aata hai ki padhai karne aata hai? And it has to stop from tomorrow." But, we walked out of that room, and Dad's like, "Listen, whatever makes you happy," right? So most parents wouldn't have done that.
Yeah.
And they would have said that, stop doing this. And when I'm having a lot of conversations with friends, my contemporaries, they're like, your parents were cool people. They let you do what you wanted to, but a lot of people wouldn't.
Yeah.
So my mom, unfortunately lost her many years ago, but she's someone who always, said that just go with it. Like, nothing's holding you back. So hence, I didn't really have too many limiting beliefs.
While talking to you, I can also feel the same, because when it comes to sales and all of this, it comes from within you. It just comes because, you love what you do. Your heart is at the place. I believe that's the most important part. Now coming, when you talked about, you started selling, and ye dhanda hum log jo apne Indian languages mein bolte hain. So like from there, how it has been, how sales, became your core thing.
Of course.
And
yeah, and like for most people, a complete roller coaster ride. Sometimes you have the highs of, cracking your biggest deals ever. And, then a few weeks later, there could be a crash where you don't even know what's happening. So feast or famine, right? And interestingly, and of course, I learned this a lot later because of, my interactions with Cardone and access to a lot of, the learning materials. Most people, when they're starting out as entrepreneurs or even sales professionals, it's really like a roller coaster. It's like up and down and up and down and up and down. And feast and famine, right? So sometimes you have so much, you're like, bahut ho gaya, and then sometimes like, mar gaye, kahan se aayega? Like, where's our, our bills going to be paid from? And interestingly, and this would be great, for your audience to know as well, there's a reason behind that. And, one very important aspect in sales is prospecting. So prospecting is about getting out there to, build new networks, new connections, new relationships, get more sales. So, and Grant would always say this, right? If people don't know you, they can't flow you. अगर हिंदी में बात करें तो जो दिखता है वो बिकता है, right? So if people don't know of you, it doesn't matter about how good you are, but it's not going to get you any business. So very important to go out there and keep prospecting. And the two rules of prospecting, that I learned, over time is one is that the more desperate you get, the worse the result. So when you don't have a pipeline, when the sales aren't coming in, and you have a person across the table and they're pushing you down and saying that, okay, you quote me $100, I'm going to give you only $50, and people are like, oh, they're so desperate that they'll take it because they said, as entrepreneurs would say, gaadi to chalti rahegi, kharche to nikal aayenge, right? So all of those things happen. And the second reason why the roller coaster actually happens is that when people are on top of their game, when the pipeline is full and strong and there's a lot of sales coming, they stop prospecting. Okay, and then what happens is that the day you stop prospecting, the net impact of that will come after 60 to 90 days where you will have no pipeline.
Right.
So hence I told you consistency is actually key. That's going to be important here.
So I believe, these are the things that you don't need on the initial, you need it on the way, like on the journey as well. It's very important at every aspect, you see and prospect yourself.
Of course.
Apart that, what are the skills or what are the hacks that you want to give when it comes to sales? Because I feel like a lot of us people are scared when it comes to sale. I mean, honestly, that's the biggest thing that I have when it comes to sales.
Yeah. Oh, 100%, and I speak a lot to youth as well because like when you mentioned, you started this podcast because, you were looking for a lot of mentorship in your journey, which you didn't have when you were starting out. When I went to college, and we talk about 1995 through 97, I was doing English honors at Bhagat Singh, and that's when I started, this gifting company in a kind of amateurish way. There was zero inputs. Okay, there was no YouTube. YouTube hadn't come till maybe 5-6 years later. There was no social media. The information available was very sketchy. So as a result, what I do is that I do go into colleges and I speak to youngsters over there. And I won't name the college, but there's a very famous girls' college in Delhi. And I walked in there and I said, okay, I'm going to do this session. I said, so how many of you want to get into sales, or you think that sales is going to play a role in your lives? Not one hand went up. Not one hand. Okay, 120 girls, not one hand went up. Okay, so I said, now let me tell you this. Okay, you want to go out with this boy, and you want to try and convince him. I said, even to do that is a sale, right? I said, you want to go out on Saturday night and your parents say you have a 10 o'clock deadline, but you want to push it to midnight. I said, even that is a sale. I said, today you want to go out for lunch, okay, and you want to eat Indian food and your friends want to eat Chinese food, and you actually get them to convince them to eat Indian food. I said, even that is a sale. And of course, this went on for about 30-40 minutes. And then I said, okay, how many of you now think sales is going to play a role in your life? Like not one hand was down. Right? So it's also this mindset, and not taking it from Ranbir Kapoor and the makers of Rocket Singh Salesman of the Year, but the biggest disservice that guy did in that movie is he said, "मुझे और कुछ नहीं मिला, इसलिए मैं sales के अंदर घुस गया. I didn't get anything else, and that's why I got into sales." So people have this belief that sales is for losers and sales is for people who didn't get anything else in life. But in this world of AI and disruption and everything that's happening, if there is one profession that is only going to go higher and higher, is sales. And in sales, you're not limited by how much money you can make, right? It's truly limitless. You're only limited by your imagination. And I think people who opt for HR and marketing and a whole bunch of other stuff, they don't realize the true potential that actually lies in sales.
Actually, the moment you said that, when you talk to youth and there was just one hand, people run away from sales job because they're like, oh, this is something that I can't do. It has targets. It has, the mindset that they are into is just because, our environment or our surroundings has made it like that.
Right.
So I would love to know what's your definition of success? Like you said, while in the college, there was not even one single hand which was down after you did that.
Right.
I really want to see that shift happening. I really want to understand what sales, how you took sales initially when you started up, and now how is it for you?
Yeah. So, and before we get into that, you also spoke about the fears, right?
Yeah.
And the fear of rejection is very, very big.
Yeah.
But the problem is that, or people, what they don't understand is that rejection will be there. Rejection will be, well, let's say you head into a job or you get in front of a customer, even you're looking to get into a relationship, there will be rejection. Rejection is a part of life.
Yeah.
So I think that's one thing that people have to, acknowledge. The second thing is that a lot of people fear accountability, right? Because sales means targets, right? But you need to be accountable. You need to be accountable, of course, firstly to yourself, then to your organization, to your clients, irrespective of whatever you do, right? So accountability is going to be an important part. A lot of people fear sales because they say, and this is funny because I was at a college again and I'm sitting with the principal and she's like, "Acha, aap sales sikhate ho?" I said, "Haan." She goes, "Wohi banda jo ganje ko kangi bechta hai." And I'm like, okay, interesting. Because I said, nahi, I said, मैं वो हूँ जो गंजे को hair transplant बेचता है, right? So the point is that there's the perception is such, that it is something that's very demeaning. And also, if you've seen Mountain Dew ads, what do Ritik say? डर के आगे जीत है. So again, confront your fears. The thing is, everyone's going to be selling. You could be the CEO of the company. You could be the janitor in the company. You're still going to be selling at some point. So, confront it and overcome those fears. So that's on the fear piece that you mentioned, earlier. Of course, you also mentioned about, the early journey and, what really happened. It was the school of hard knocks. It was the school of hard knocks. I mean, that's how I learned. I remember going into this one organization, a big electronics company, and at the time I was showing them, New Year's was around the corner, and I was showing them diaries. And the guy asked me, "Iska paper ka kitna GSM hoga?" So he was testing me, and I was just starting out. And it's something that you should know, right? Because you're showing a diary, you should know the GSM. And I said, "Oh, let me get back to you." He said, 300. I said, "Haan, 300. He took the diary and he threw it on the floor. And he said, "When you know your product, okay, that's when you come back and sell to me." Because the paper could not have been more than 75 or 85 GSM. But at the time, we didn't know, right?
Yeah.
But then that was also a lesson to go back and say that, okay, I need to figure out my stuff. And, when you're doing gifting, so there's diaries and there's T-shirts and there's pens and there's different branding processes. There's so much that was truly, an education, in due course. So that's really what happened. And it was unfortunately a situation where, I always say people get into something because there's aspiration. You want to create something big or you want to make a name for yourself, or there's desperation. Like, you need to do something, otherwise you're going to sink. For me, it was desperation, unfortunately, because the family had gone through a lot of, crises at the time and all that. There was no choice. I was told by my dad, he came back one day and I was getting ready to go to Gungaroos, which is, a nightclub at the time in Delhi at the Maurya, because, that's what we did as first year college students. And he came back and said, "We have no money left. So tomorrow, figure out something." And there was no choice. So I was pretty much thrown in the deep end and I had to figure that out right away. So.
But I feel like we go through that hard times to become who we are today.
100%.
You see today yourself, and I believe, if that situation wouldn't have occurred, you wouldn't have been there, right?
For sure.
And then talking about limiting beliefs and all of that, that was again because target sales and I was talking about. So like, I believe you gave me a whole structure about it. And I'll tell you this example that I have. Right now, we have business schools where sales is being taught to, people who have done their masters, who have done their degrees, and our education system really needs to know, I've seen this recently happening inside the education system. They have their college fairs and they try to sell their own things. And the immense pleasure that, to sell your own thing and your own product, whatever you've made with all that efforts and everything. So like, I want to know, like, your gifting business and all of that you already have.
Sure.
How that changed your sales mindset? I mean, there is a example that you quoted right now that, something of that sort happened with you, that diary thing. But apart that, are there some incidents that we can talk about?
Oh, tons. And interestingly, when you mentioned, about, of course, college fests and, all of that. So in colleges at MBAs, finance is taught, marketing is taught, but sales, isn't taught. And recently we had a very big Indian corporate and they had the entire team come by, and there was this one girl and she said, "I've just done an MBA in sales." And I'm like, "But sales ke andar to MBA hota nahi hai, and she just finished her program. And I said, "There's marketing and there's finance." She goes, "Nahi, aap MBA ka matlab samjhe nahi in your course." And I said, "Okay." She goes, "Mujhe bechna aata hai." So that was an MBA, for her as well, which I thought was really cool as well. So I just wish it was taught earlier. I think kids can start early. Like even when you mentioned college fests, I remember, my brother and I, we used to set up stalls at, Diwali melas when we were like, 6, 7, 8, comic book library, so all of these kind of things. My mum, she used to have a business and she used to attend exhibitions, and I used to go and help her with those exhibitions, hoping to get some, money back, pocket money to buy comics or, video games or whatever. So I just wish, parents would encourage it more, from youth. You don't have to wait till you're actually in school or in college. It's a skill that's extremely necessary, and you'll learn all aspects once you actually get into entrepreneurship or even working. You'll have all the aspects of objection handling, rejection, negotiation. I remember the first time I went to Maruti, and Maruti was the first big account that we got way back in '99. And this gentleman called Madhusudan was there, and he was the toughest negotiator ever. And he gave me like impossible terms, and I was just so naive, and I was just in my early 20s, and I said yes, yes, yes to everything. And I came back, and my dad's like, okay, this is just stupid. Like, you're never going to make money off this guy or this company. But what happened is the way we handled that entire piece, we were able to leverage, a Maruti purchase order. And people said, oh, you work in Maruti. And Maruti at the time had like 71% market share. So we went to, Tata, we went to Honda, we went to BMW, and we picked up all their orders at premium pricing, but only because we had a relationship and an entry with Maruti. And these people remain friends, even today. So I think what is key, for anyone who's listening in and watching this, is that focus on the relationships. Right? I always say this, a lot of my trainings, the difference between a contact and a contract, right? And if you look at, and you write down contact, which is CONTACT and CONTRACT, people say, oh, contact is something you have in your phone book or, in your email database, etc. And a contract is an order. I'm like, yes, but it is the letter R.
Yeah.
And that R stands for relationships, right? So focus on people, put people first. So the 80-20 rule relationships is 80% people, 20% product or service, not the other way around. I meet people who are phenomenal. They know everything about their product. They know everything about their service, but they're terrible at handling people. And hence they struggle. So put people first and build relationships, right? That is core.
I mean, I feel like at every stage, even when you are getting yourself a job or something, you're selling. You're selling either yourself, a product, or something or the other every single time.
Yeah.
All right. So this brings me to this question. What kind of, things, like, when you do sessions, when you give trainings, what kind of people, when it comes to their limiting beliefs or it comes to their mindset, what kind of people have you been dealing with? What are very basic and common examples that have been patterns or you've been watching since years?
Right. So normally what we do is one is a 10x bootcamp, which happens at the academy in Noida.
Okay.
And, this is, we have a lot of people who come in, and it's a very wide, variety of people.
Okay.
They've even been kids who've been like, first year and second year students who've been sent by their parents.
Oh.
Okay. So that's one, set of people. We have a lot of professionals who come in. So working professionals who are looking to, we had someone in our last bootcamp, which happened, just a few weeks ago, who had moved from accounting into sales. And was looking to, make a mark, and said, I need to get off to the right start. I need to learn, the tools and, what you have. And I always tell this to people, right? If you want to climb Mount Everest, are you going to climb with someone, who's never done it before? Or are you going to climb with the best in the world?
Yeah.
Right? Which is why I went to Grant Cardone. Everyone said, "Arey yaar, koi Indian trainer pakad leta," and all that. I said, no, dude, you find the best. Okay, and then you emulate the best, and you basically, learn from the best, and you get mentored by the best. So today, I mean, thankfully, God's been kind, and the circumstances have been kind. Everyone says, okay, GB, you're one of the best there is in the country today. I train some of the largest companies, be it the HDFC banks and the Axis's and, Steelcase and HNI, some of the largest companies in the world as well. So coming back to the bootcamp, there have been students, there have been working professionals, there have been startups, there have also been very established businesses. We've had people, who've been second gen and third gen into the business. They're coming in as well. So very diverse, because I think everyone's realized that you need to master this thing called selling. Right? Without that, you're in a bit of trouble. When we come in and do corporate workshops, like I leave for Macau next week, and there I'm going to be talking to 250 people from HDFC Bank. Of course, these are their top RMs. So top relationship managers. They've been asked to come in and take this session. From me. So very diverse, and it could range from, like I said, a student to someone who's been in the business for 30 years or more. Yeah.
So, like, how does this thing change? When it comes to delivering, you said, there's a lot of difference when it comes to corporate, whereas when it comes to students, mid-career level, professionals, because everybody is having their own limiting sort of beliefs. So how do you, picture all of them together, like putting all of them in a same room and, putting in everyone's need and, giving them back, how do you just change the aura of the room?
Yeah, so it's a very interesting question because obviously what happens is the star of any training, the star of any speaking gig is not the trainer, it's the audience.
Oh.
Right, so that's one thing that I think one has to be very mindful of. So hence, even your delivery, your tone, everything has to change based on who
Audience.
is in the room, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's something that a lot of people miss, and they almost come in and deliver the same thing for every audience. But that's almost like me taking off my shoe and giving it to you and say, hey, this is a one size fit all solution, put on that shoe. It's probably not going to work, right?
Yeah.
So I think one aspect is read the room, which is why I love doing trainings live in person. I think one of my gifts as someone who's been selling for so long is about how I can change my delivery, my conversation, while the content is kind of similar, but how the application of that content can change to the various different sets of people in that room as well. It comes with time, but I always tell people that we've been taught in school, okay, treat everyone how you want to be treated.
Yeah.
Okay, that's what we were taught in school, but that's actually wrong. I mean, that's a moral science lesson. The truth is, treat everyone how they want to be treated.
Yeah.
Right? So you actually have to, read the room, see what they're all about, and make those tweaks. And if you see the body language, or if you see them, the shoulders drooping, or they're being distracted, again, be in conversation and just figure out, are we off track, and what do we need to do to bring it back on track? I think that's important as well.
All right. At the Skill Set School, we also talk about soft skills that are needed when it comes to sales. So I want to know what kind of skills would you suggest people to learn with sales, or what kind of soft skills would you suggest to people with sales?
Yeah. So there's an interesting misconception is that, and this, there was this girl sitting in the audience one time, and I said, why did you get into sales?
Yeah.
So she said, जब से मैं छोटी थी, मैं बातें बड़ी करती थी, तो पापा ने बोला sales के अंदर आ जाओ. Okay, so the misconception is that you have to be a great talker and you have to be an extrovert to get into sales. Okay, interestingly, maybe I can speak better now, but I'm extremely introverted still, all right? And the point is, you don't have to be extroverted and you don't have to be a great speaker.
Yeah.
But what are some of the skills that are required, when you get into sales? One of them is persistence, okay? Because your follow-up has to be really strong. One of the biggest mistakes that people make, or I think that, every sale will close on the first conversation. On Instagram, you see people running courses, calling it the one call closer.
Yeah.
There is no such thing as the one call close. Okay, you might get lucky once in a while and you might actually go ahead and close it. But the number one skill that's required in sales is follow-up. Right? And I love a quote, and this is from, the Gautam Buddha many years ago. I mean, we're talking about 2000 years plus, where he said, in the battle between the stream and the rock, the stream will always win, not through strength, but through perseverance. Right? So you just lag it out, right? So that actually becomes, key. So one of the biggest skills that you require in sales is obviously, perseverance and, persistence and follow-up.
Yeah.
The other skill that's very important is, obviously the attitude.
Yeah.
And which is why at the boot camps, we spend so much time talking about attitude. And I always talk about, even on my wristband, you see attitude, action, acceleration, right? So that's from a TEDx talk I delivered, as well. It all starts with attitude. If the attitude is right, everything can be fixed. But if the attitude is off, I mean, you can bring in, the most skilled person on paper, and they will deliver nothing in reality.
I feel like these are the very little things, or these are the skills that people don't even talk about. We talk about communication so much, we talk about speaking so much, we talk about great speaker, whereas when it comes to attitude building, mindset, these are the skills that I feel like we really need to cater to. Also, I would love to know, what do you actually, when it comes to this attitude, you said you spend a lot of time when you put in, so do you have some activities, or how do you get that switch, or how does that happen?
So one thing which I found is very interesting, and it's happened especially after the pandemic, because the pandemic was a life-changing / game-changer event for so many. And I always say people have become clamped. And this picture pops up with a wheel clamp, on a tire, and that clamps is actually a template that I use, in terms of what has happened, for people. So the C in the clamps is obviously complacency. A lot of guys have become, complacent. They aren't even showing up on the field of play. to play the game, to do what they need to be doing.
Yeah.
And Grant always says this, and I so agree, that it's the spectators that will pay and the players will get paid. Right? So the spectators are people who are sitting back, waiting, watching. Okay, you're going to pay. Okay, just like in the game of cricket, spectators are the ones who've gone to Firozshah Kotla and they're paying to buy the tickets.
Yeah.
So spectators will pay and players will get paid. You can't be complacent.
Yeah.
The L is about lack of leverage. Okay, you have to leverage what you already have. All of us have something that we can leverage. Our network, our reputation, our education, our knowledge. That's something that's extremely important as well.
Yeah.
The A is obviously attitude. Either you can have a can't do one or a can do one. So the can do attitude. M is relying too much on motivation. You can't. Motivation will fail you. I always say motivation is like the Gabbar Singh of your picture, right? And people come into my session, they're like, "Oh, motivate us." I'm like, "Wait, this is not for you because you're going to walk away from here on a Saturday motivated, and Monday, life is going to happen and you're going to come crashing down."
Yeah.
Right? So motivation is in waves, right? So motivation can never be what you rely on. The P is pessimism. There's a lot of negativity. There's a lot of people, who for the smallest of things become very, very negative. And the S is that they're slow. So speed is of the essence. Like I don't know if you've read Mel Robbins and the 5-second rule, but it's all about how speed is of the essence.
Yeah, I got that.
So hence, I say a lot of people are, so we do a clamps exercise. So we have a questionnaire, and once we've spoken about all these things, they do a questionnaire that are you clamped, right? And then I talk about the AAA, which is to my mind the antidote. Of clamps, and which is again attitude, action, acceleration, right? So what's your attitude? How do you rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 10? What's the level of action that you're taking right now?
Yeah.
And the most important of the A's is actually acceleration, because what happens is when people start hitting their targets, people start hitting their goals, they actually take their foot off the pedal. They're like, "Hamara to ho gaya, target to meet ho gaya." But this is the time where you actually push the pedal down and move faster. And I give the example of Kohli and Tendulkar, right? Now, when Kohli came into the Indian team and he started hitting a few hundreds, he didn't become complacent. He said, "How do I train to be a beast so I can take down Tendulkar's 100 centuries?" Right? And today, Kohli's at 80 something, heading towards 100, but he's not slowing down. He's letting certain formats of the game go. He says, "Okay, I can't play Test cricket," so he's letting Test cricket go, focusing on his ODIs, focusing on his T20s, but he will get past 100, right? And that's acceleration.
So why I was asking this, because it's like people have the answers. It's just like we don't have anyone asking us the right set of questions,
100%,
making us think on these sort of things. I believe you did one of these things, and I really love it. And then putting it to an end was I wanted to come on this part, how these people can connect with you and how these people. So like you told about a boot camp also that we have in Noida also, and people can join. So like, let's say if somebody wants to join all of this and wants to enter into your zone, how does that happen?
So of course, the boot camp is something we do every 2 months. And that's something that, is available on the Gaurav Bhagat Academy website. And if you search for the 10X Sales Bootcamp, you'll actually find that. And that's and we have Akanksha and the team that actually goes ahead and handles those queries. So in case anyone's interested, they can always write to sales@gauravbhagatacademy.com, and Akanksha will obviously revert back. So that's the bootcamp, and that is something that's very highly in demand, but is 2 days of we spend maybe 30-35 minutes today, but imagine 18 hours of interaction and in-depth insights and all of that. So very, very powerful. There are obviously a lot of corporate engagements that happen. So a lot of companies would ask me to come in and spend time with their teams. Those could be like longer and larger mandates. Interestingly, at the GBA we do no upsells. A lot of people come and they're like thinking, "Oh, it's going to be the 99 rupee webinar," which we don't do. Okay, and then it's going to be the 1-day session, and eventually you'll be out for lakhs and lakhs before you know it, and you'll be like, "Oh, I got more value in that 99 rupee webinar than I did in that multi-year contract." So our thing is very set. The bootcamp is priced at 15K plus GST for those 2 days, and you get invited for alumni meetups. There's catch-ups, and all that is free. We have an LMS that you get access to. Everything is free. So I just believe that there is so much of a trust deficit in this space today that I don't want people coming in thinking that अरे यार पता नहीं कितने का लपेटने वाला है, कौन सी कंघी अब गंजे को बेचने वाला है. I don't want that to happen, right? Thankfully, our other businesses pay for everything else, and this is a give back and also a passion project, and it's about changing the lives of many. So hence that's how it happens.
This is so beautiful, honestly. You explaining again. It's all sales. I'm telling it to you. And, I have a live example of you, how beautifully you have pictured everything. And it's like very simply, soberly, we're just flowing with the ease. All right, well, coming to a wrap, I do have a rapid fire round with you. I'll play that. But before, I would like to give all the stage to you to end it up. Any piece of advice that you want to give to the audience, anything that you want to say to the audience?
Yeah, so for everyone who's watching and listening in, just remember that sales is not something to fear. Like we spoke earlier, dar ke aage jeet hai, and everyone is selling. And once you actually accept that and you decide to embrace it and decide to crush it, truly you will live a life without limitations. People sometimes ask me, what is the 10x life? So the 10x life is basically life without limitations. Where you walk into a restaurant, you open a menu, and you don't have to look at the price column to decide what you want to eat. Okay, you eat what you want to eat. Okay, you want to have like prawns or chicken or whatever that day. You do it because of your preference. You walk into a store, you like something, and you buy that T-shirt or you buy that dress, or you buy that suit because you like it. It's not like you're looking at the price tag and saying, "Ye to nahi ho paega." So as soon as you can, eliminate that out of your, dictionary and your mindset, I think you're off to a really good start. And that really is, the 10x piece. The other piece of advice I'll give people is that when you go out to buy something, okay, we've spoken a lot about sales, but when you go to buy something, don't be the kind of buyer who is very nitpicky, always trying to beat people down and saying, and negotiate too hard. Because what's going to happen is when you go in as a difficult buyer, what you're going to get in return when you go out to sell is that you'll probably have a very difficult sales situation as well. So be a pleasant buyer. Okay, be someone who if you find value, give them that. Don't make life uncomfortable for someone that you're actually buying from. And you'll find that the same happens, to you as well when you go out to sell as well.
Definitely. It comes back in every possible way because we don't know, at every point we are even selling. Although we are buying, but then there's a part of us that is also selling at times. It could be anywhere.
Yeah.
All right. Moving ahead with the rapid fire round, I would love to know one quote or one life advice like the way you gave it today is still with you.
So one I've started using a lot recently is make excuses or make a difference. You can't do both, right? So MAD, and I was at a school recently, I was talking to kids and they were the graduating batch of, 2025. And, we spoke about, all the stuff that's happening in the world right now. And I said, be mad. And the principal's looking at me and the kids are looking at me. And I said, yeah, be mad. Okay, it's your duty to be mad. And you're looking at me and they're like, what's he saying? I said, yes, but that MAD stands for make a difference. So just go out there and make a difference in the life of whoever, someone that you meet in the morning, just by, being nice and pleasant to them, your friends, your community, the people that you work with, your clients, make a difference, even a small one. So that would be my quote. Make excuses or make a difference. You can't do both.
Damn. All right. One book that is still with you.
Okay, so many, but I think for your audience, Power Broke, Damon John, who's like, one of the original sharks on the Shark Tank. And Damon John wrote Power Broke, which is fantastic. And it was about the fact that, when he was starting out FUBU, which is a apparel company, how he continued to hustle, continued to work in his job at a lobster restaurant as a waiter until he knew that he had enough, to actually move out. But Power Broke, I think that'd be great for your audience.
All right. I need to have a look at that. One song that you still relate to or still is in your heart?
Interesting. Chamba Wamba, they ran that song. They did that song, right? I get knocked down, but I get up again. So and I remember one time I was in college. I was at Close Encounters, and I actually just sing that song, which is embarrassing. But you will get knocked down, but you need to get up again. So I think that would be the song.
All right, I'll end it up with a shout out to anybody who you want to give a shout out to for being with you. It could be a friend, it could be a colleague, it could be your team members, anybody that you want to give a big shout out.
So I would say family first. My mom first up for again encouraging the mindset. My dad for always believing. My wife, who even today is perhaps also my biggest critic, but yet a big fan. And the kids who are always wondering which part of the world I may be in currently. So I would say family first, but a lot of people to acknowledge, but family first.
Family first. All right. That was so beautiful having you with us. I mean, it just changed something inside me today. I really don't know how is it, but I've actually learned a different way of looking towards sale because how beautifully you've pictured it to me today. And I believe there's a lot of impact that he would have obviously made on you people. So don't forget to, connect with him whenever possible because I am definitely coming to your boot camp for once, for sure. We'll definitely join you in Noida. All right, so that's a wrap. Do not forget to like, share, comment, subscribe. And in case if you have any sort of questions, please do not forget to drop it down in the comments section below. We'll be more than happy to help you out. Thank you.